Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick here with Camp Notes from August 9th, 2023. Not too hot today, in the mid 80s, I would say, out in Owings Mills. Full pads on today. Participation in general. Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses, we believe, had vet days, although we did not get an official confirmation of that. In terms of otherwise, the various lists of injuries and whatnot that people are on, the PUP list is now down to just J.K. Dobbins, and we'll get to that exciting news in a moment. The NFI list, Mullen, Voorhees, Bowser, and Nick Moore. Three of those four not expected to play at any time this year. Bowser, we are still hoping we'll have some good news on him, and he'll be back. In terms of practice being missed today, Simpson, Trenton Simpson missed. David Ajabo was actually back and played pretty well. Rock Yassin out. Stone was out. Mollett was out. And Pepe Williams was out, which left the Ravens kind of shorthanded in slot corner in particular. Early in practice, this is a bad one. Gus Edwards walked into the locker room. No obvious injury, but he left the field as we were switching to the other field. So kind of the media all walked by the area where he was leaving the field. So it's never good news when a player leaves the field. Did leave some opportunity for some of the other backs who are a little bit buried on the depth chart. Gordon got a few more carries, as did Keaton Mitchell in particular. So at least some benefit there for them. We certainly hope it's nothing serious for Gus. No new word on Dobbins. There was no John Harbaugh at the podium today, so that's not a big surprise, but his PUP status continues. Bateman is the big return. He returned from PUP, still is not doing any 11-on-11 or even 7-on-7 drills. He just practiced on the side and did some individual drills, and that was the day for him. I would say it was a physical and chippy practice, particularly by the defense, which they seem to be the more physical of the two groups, more eager to mix it up. The scoreboard showed a 64-58 win for the offense in a practice where I would have said, just looking at it, that the defense seemed a little bit ahead. They certainly were the more physical of the two units, and I think that I've mentioned already, so I don't need to go further into it. The other big news of the day: Broderick Washington extended through the 2026 season, $17.5 million for the additional 3 years. He also is his year that he's already signed for is already included in that. So a much needed extension for the Ravens. The 2024 Ravens had only Travis Jones on the defensive line set to play. So I've been kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, and whether it might be Broderick Washington or Justin Madubuike, who took an early deal. I think the Ravens got a fair price on Broderick here. Might even really turn out to be an excellent bargain if he continues his development, plays a little bit better this year than he did last. He's an impressive man, and in terms of his work ethic, nobody does anything but praise it. So that's very positive. I'll have a little bit more on that at the end of the show, because he was included in the interviews as a kind of a surprise addition. He had some interesting things to say. So let's start with special teams. The kickoff drill is what they started the day with, and this is a good one. A lot of it's about kickoff blocking, about trying to follow the block if you're the return man and know what you're doing. But the guy who really stood out was Josh Ross, and it didn't matter whether he was blocking, where he was excellent, or covering, where he was also excellent. But he did a very good job of finishing his own one-on-one drop back block. So you start up closer to the spot of the kick. You drop back to a certain point where the blocking is set up. Then you have to execute your block and not hopefully let your one-on-one assignment get by. And it's just, they start this with one-on-one, and they build up, as they do with most special teams drills, to be an 11-on-11 drill. So anyway, he looked very good. He set up his own block, and he beat his own opponent when doing a coverage snap. So Josh Ross is a guy who really stood out to me. Daryl Worley also slung down Shamar Bridges with his block, so I thought that was good. Jeremiah Moon overpowered Dante Demas But unfortunately, he also had a hold on Christian Welch a little bit earlier on one of his own blocking return snaps. Very competitive drill. The physicality was apparent and I think very much expected. Chris Horton, who's a special teams coach, was regularly exhorting players to finish their blocks and being very happy with that physicality being delivered. And he had some coaching for players that weren't able to stand up to the physicality and were getting a little bit blown off their spot as blockers in particular. And you could see him going to each one that kind of failed to do that. And there were several in this practice. On offense, I'd say it was a much better day than it was on Saturday. Saturday, a very difficult day for the offense with those 9 interceptions. Today was much better. So if you haven't heard the last couple of days, Lamar Jackson has been back and playing with the wristband again. So practicing with the wristband, I should say. So it looks like that experiment has kind of gone by the boards. And it was interesting. In one of the earlier camp notes, it might be the 26th or the 28th of July, Monken is at the podium and he talks a little bit about, why he wants Lamar to basically not use and I'm paraphrasing what he actually said. So you can actually go back and listen to what he said if you want to hear it, but I'll give you my interpretation of it. Is he didn't like the fact that Lamar Jackson was using the wristband as a crutch, and he wanted Lamar to learn the offense better. So he's not just parroting words off the wristband, as opposed to really knowing what's supposed to happen. He thought that was important for, what you do at the line of scrimmage and all that. For whatever reason, that's a difficult thing to implement. And, you could come up with a lot of reasons why it won't be true. I won't go into that. But anyway, Lamar is wearing the wristband again and calling the plays, presumably from that, although I wasn't in a position to hear if that's what's actually happening in the huddle. One thing we saw quite a few times today was Jackson's connection with Devin Duvernay, who was probably the best receiver today. He hit him several times, and it's when he hit them that's important. So he escaped the pocket to the right, and he hit Duvernay. Duvernay found space. You really love to see that on the extended plays. A player who develops trust with Jackson. I think Jackson trusts his hands to a good degree, so it's really nice to see that happen. The very next play after that extended play, he hit him for a 10-yard gain on the other sideline. So nice to see that trust being built up. Obviously, Duvernay had a fair number of targets last year and earned some trust from Lamar, I'd say, in terms of his play and his good high percentage catch rate. But this is good to see it continue. And with all of the other options that Lamar has in Beckham and Andrews and Aguilar, Bateman when he comes back, but with all the other options he has, and Zay, of course, it's nice to see Lamar still having that trust for a player like Duvernay and still to feel like he'll be an important part of the offense. And I really think he will be this year. We'll see him on the field more than a token number of snaps. Jackson had one interception on the day. It was on an overthrow that was collected by Jaquan Amos. I could not even tell you who that ball was intended for. I could tell you it was overthrown because it was thrown into empty space. I don't think it was a throwaway intended to fall in empty space. So I couldn't exactly tell you, but Jaquan Amos did a really good job of digging it out, not letting it hit the ground and collecting the interception that was the only one of the day. For the second consecutive day now, John Simpson was starting at left guard. Now, if you caught the show last week, the last time Harbaugh was at the podium that I recorded it, he indicated that would happen, that switch would be happening next week, that Simpson would be moving into left guard and Saleh would be moving out of the twos. That, in fact, is exactly what happened. So that's the only change on the offensive line was him at left guard. Once you get past the fact that both Moses and Stanley had the day off for some reason. So John Simpson at left guard. Yeah, this is one of these situations where I got the question, do you think it bodes better for Simpson to be second or first in terms of his chance to start? And I have heard this in terms of companies trying to do things like giving each of two people either 2 or 3 years to run the company so they can retain two very talented people where they'd like to keep them both, and maybe they have each very important parts of the business they run. Well, anyway, if in that sort of a situation, I think you're better off being second. And the reason is you have a chance to react to the person ahead of you and the mistakes that they made. It might be some of that we'll see from Simpson as well, that, he has his own problems in terms of a lot of penalties. And so we'll see how that goes in the preseason. But Saleh has his penalties with inexperience and some potential issues with pass blocking that hopefully we'll see Simpson shine a little better at. So if you had to tell me who's ahead right now, I think that it's probably pretty darn close. But I think that Simpson, I would say, is the slight leader right now in terms of his likelihood of being the starter come opening day. Let's see. Zay Flowers had a nice tip drill completion to himself near the left sideline, 15-yard catch. He didn't do a lot today. He was targeted a couple times, short plays, 7-on-7. It just weren't any big explosive plays to Zay today. Nothing way down the field. Nothing where he, made a move that made people ooh and ah. The people did ooh and ah over the tipped ball to himself. That was a nice play. But there wasn't any of the leaving a cornerback in the dust situations that we've seen from him and from some of the other receivers over the last few days. One-on-one drills, I had a few plays I wanted to talk about. Shamar Bridges had a drop. He also overran a 40-yard pass down the right sideline. So you want to, your one-on-one reps are pretty good opportunities. They're also, because the quarterback doesn't have a bunch of options, they're also reasonable opportunities for the defense as well. But you need to do the best what you can to position yourself to make a move on your opponent in a one-on-one drill, and hopefully to find the football and get it. And the first time he dropped the football, the second time he never found it. And that's not obviously an ideal combination for Bridges. Nelson Aguilar had probably the move of the day. He lost JAD with a double move for 10+ yards of separation, I would say. Thing of beauty, and Nelson Aguilar is having a pretty big camp at this point. You'd have to figure he's going to get some significant snaps too. So it's nice in terms of the receivers not just have Bateman back, which would be the single biggest factor of all, but that OBJ and Aguilar aren't walking wounded. They aren't missing a whole bunch of time during camp. They're available, and it looks like both of them really want to play a significant role for the Ravens this year. I think OBJ is kind of predetermined by the contract size he has. I don't think it's as obvious with Aguilar, but I think they will find a roster spot for him, and I expect him to have more than a token number of catches. So I wouldn't be surprised if he would end up getting 2 catches per game, or 2 targets per game, I should say, if he's with the team. I mean, he's looked surprisingly good in camp, better than I thought he would. Another guy who showed up in the one-on-one drills was Sean Ryan. He blew by cornerback Corey Mayfield for a big gain down the left sideline. And it was one of these things where Greg Lewis went to him right before the play and seemed to whisper to him something. And it must have been like overriding whatever the play call was supposed to be, and just telling him, go ahead and beat this guy deep. And sure enough, he did. And Mayfield couldn't stay with him down that left sideline, long completion. Move over to 7-on-7 drills. Now, one-on-one drills are better and closer to 11-on-11 drills than 7-on-7. 7-on-7 is the easiest format for the quarterback to excel, for them to get the lots of easy pitch and catch completions, for no easy pressure situations to develop. So 7-on-7 is the easiest form for the offense. And Marcus Williams had a big hit on a catch by Aguilar, but Aguilar held on. Another, definitely a plus play for Nelson. Just like in the one-on-ones, Sean Ryan again beat Mayfield for a 40+ yard gain. The play after Mayfield had just made a very nice play, clubbing a ball free from Makai Polk. So a couple of, Mayfield certainly had his ups and downs. I think he had 2 interceptions on Saturday. But with the Ravens cornerback room in a lot of trouble, he looks like a guy that the Ravens may decide makes the roster for starters. Then they'd have him for 4 years, and he might be a guy who sees playing time this year. So it'll be one of the players I'm certainly looking at during these preseason games coming up. So that's very exciting. Other 7-on-7 action. Christian Welch had a near INT in coverage of Vokalek, and that was 10 yards right in the middle of the field between the hashes. Vokalek has been all over the field. In fact, a number of the great defensive plays in this game, they weren't necessarily bad plays by Vokalek, but Vokalek was the target on a number of these plays and ended up pretty well targeted for a physical beating by the defense, as we'll get to in some of the rest of this. But anyway, Christian Welch, a near INT in coverage of him. Move on to 11-on-11. Number of things happening. Jalen Armour Davis, has had a very difficult camp, in my opinion. I know there's people who want to pull the positive out. There's people who want to say the positive in terms of coach speak. But in my ability, that third corner job is wide open for the taking. And he's one of the guys saying, I don't think I deserve it by his play on the field. And that's really unfortunate. But today he was flagged for a 40-yard DPI on Odell Beckham down the right sideline. Flag ran out very quickly. And all of the troubles he's had, some of it with penalties and others of it was just the ball, getting to the receiver even when he's there, are a function of him not finding the football in the air. He doesn't really seem to do that very well at all. Doesn't get his hands on the ball well. Ball skills are negligible for Jalen Armour Davis. So he's got to bring something to the game there. He's either, and the third thing he could bring is a bodacious club of the sort that Marlon Humphrey has. Now, Humphrey can do other things for you on the field, and he can find the football, but he can club that ball free too when it's at the catch point or just coming down from the catch point, which is something, if you're looking for a hope for Davis, I think it would have to include something like that, because he right now the ball skills are not there. He falls for too many fakes. He's too easily, manipulated by the receiver, and I think that's could get him. And it's part of what is making him grabby. And I'm afraid that will turn into penalties if he gets significant snaps during the season. We certainly hope Rock Ya-Sin is healthy, but I think right now, if I had to say, I think the Ravens are still looking for another cornerback. They need a Sam linebacker, but they need a cornerback every bit as much. So that corner situation is pretty dire right now. Other 11-on-11 action, Ajabo and Hamilton wrapped up Gordon for a loss on a run play. The Ravens look very good in run defense, generally speaking. There are only a few good runs on the day. I would say Keaton had several, and his speed was apparent, got it a level 2, exploited holes fairly well. But generally speaking, I'd say that the Ravens' run defenses looked excellent. And both Ajabo and Hamilton had big days in terms of what they did. Hamilton's been all over the field in camp in general. And I'm really looking forward to him playing very little in the preseason. I think at this point, he probably gets the starter's treatment. There's no need to see him out there for very much time. He probably will anyway, just because he's, kind of wants the live fire at strong safety in the NFL. But I think we're at a point where you want to make sure Hamilton is bubble wrapped. You want to make sure he's ready for the regular season and isn't taking a lot of risks with his body during a preseason when other players may be more physical than he is. So that's always a risk. Talked a little bit about Ardarius Washington on Saturday because he had a big game and a big day, I should say. And he again had a big day today where he was seeing a lot of reps with the ones on defense. So that's really part of the key for Ardarius to be a serious consideration for the slot cornerback role. He's just got to be getting some playing time, and he's got to go into the season. He wants to get first half playing time, so he's at least going against the twos, mostly for the Eagles on Saturday. And I think if he can get that, then that'll be his audition. The best they can do. Hopefully, they get an evaluation of him that they like during that time. He's a guy who I am still hopeful for could be the slot corner on this team. And I mentioned Pepe was out today, and Mollett was out today. So that's a couple of guys who are in competition with him for that slot corner role. This is his other opportunity right now. He needs to take advantage of it, and hopefully he will. So Lamar makes some other good open throws in zone, both to Likely and to Andrews at various times. There might have been about 3 of them between the two. Defense seemed to be playing a fairly soft cover 2 shell. And so it's the kind of thing where you just really like to see that what Lamar is doing with his other receivers, or what the other receivers are doing, are forcing Lamar to take those threats seriously. And that's creating room for for Andrews and for Likely. And that's going to be one of the big keys to the Ravens this offense this season. Can they continue to get Andrews some nice open looks in the middle of the field? And if not him, how about Likely? Those two guys together could do a lot of damage. And the last play I'll mention from 11 on 11 specifically is one of the last plays of the day. And John Simpson, the left guard, is a very large man, but he was upended. I did not see exactly how it happened, but he went to the ground, and it looked like he flipped to go to the ground. He got up. He was not hurt, or at least he was not apparently hurt, but he then got a razzing chest bump from Odafe Owe, who was making a lot of noise, and it came up to, give him a chest bump. So, insult to injury addition kind of thing by Owe there. But the defense, obviously, they're playing cocky. They're playing gregarious and obnoxious, as John Harbaugh talked about those words last week. And I think they're really enjoying it in terms of what's going on. Keaton Mitchell, I'd say, looked fairly explosive as a runner today. That's important. We need to see some of Keaton. We need to see some of him exploiting holes. We need to see some burst from him when he gets into level 2. One of the things about camp run plays is that the running backs run them out, but the rest of the teams don't. They, only run them out until the whistle. And so the running backs are getting, 1 out of every 6 plays or so, that they're maybe fewer than that they're actually running the football. So they want to run it out for a touchdown pretty much every time they touch the ball, or at least something close to that. We saw a little bit less of that run all the way down the field stuff from Keaton Mitchell today, because there were few running backs available. So him and Owen, let me get this right here. Yeah, Owen Wright were taking a lot of the snaps at running back. Melvin Gordon took a few as well, of course. And that paucity of running backs means that you don't want to have them expend all the energy. I do remember one Hard Knocks episode where the team in question, I don't remember which it was, it might have been Carolina, but I don't remember for sure, was out of running backs. They only had one guy left on the whole roster, and he was taking all the running back reps. And then one of the defensive linemen clotheslined him, and he got up pissed off about it, of course. And the head coach made a point. I think it was Del Rio, because that's telling me it's probably Jags or Panthers, Jags rather. He wanted to say that, hey, this is important that we take care of each other. And I think that's something to remember always when we're having these practices, and particularly ones in full pads, that, you still don't want to go 100% hitting speed for opening day here. And you probably don't want to go even 100% of the hitting speed for a preseason game. And you probably don't want to even go 100% of the hitting speed for a joint practice where your opponent is a member of the Commanders. So at that point, you can do a few more things in terms of putting the other guy on the ground, but you still don't want to injure people. You got to play by a set of rules that they have for practice that's different in terms of tackling and not blocking low and whatnot. So I think it's important that the Ravens take care of each other. They're starting to run into a few more injuries now in camp. The running back and cornerback situations in particular don't look great in terms of injuries. So hopefully they'll get that figured out. Let's see. Keaton Mitchell, I did mention that he had more attempts today with Edwards and Dobbins out. He had some nice burst into level 2. The other thing he had, there was a jailbreak on a screen pass, jailbreak in terms of the protection. And whoever it was, it might have been Snoop, got the ball off late, but or on time, I'll say, before the pass rush got home. but Keaton Mitchell couldn't haul it in. And so, Mitchell's got to look for not just to be ordinary, but be extraordinary at this point in order to, make some plays, get on the team, get a significant role right out of the gate. He's very important to the Ravens because, he'll be around in 2024. Others won't, and including probably both Dobbins and Edwards. So he needs to figure it out and pretty quickly. What mark can he leave on the offense, on this team, on the coach's memory from a big preseason and some practices? Talking a little bit more about the defense here now. I talked about Ardarius Washington seeing more time with the ones at the nickel. I don't need to go back into that again. Brandon Stephens is back at outside corner, and that's honestly where the Ravens need him most right now. They're very, very short in that area. So we've seen, I think, a few philosophies that were present in camp early on that have kind of had to be unwound or unraveled because of the turn of events. And so, obviously with the Ravens situation at cornerback being dire, Stephens going back there makes a lot of sense. Maybe they keep a different safety, maybe they don't. But they'll have another option to go back to that in particular. So Stephens anyway on the outside is something I thought made a lot of sense. The Ravens did have a lot of people to sift through, but they no longer have Mullen. They're missing some other guys like Mollett and Demarion Williams right now. JAD is not playing particularly well. So that combination of things, I think, is a good enough reason to move Stephens back to the outside. And I kind of hope he stays there, and I'm going to be very interested to see where he plays in the preseason. I think it'll tell you a lot about what the Ravens' plans truly are. Some other defenders that had a big day. David Ojabo forced Owen Wright to the sideline after a short gain while in coverage. I wouldn't normally mention a play like that, but it's nice to see Ojabo adapting to some coverage responsibilities and doing a good job with it. So, you have to see him be a downhill player and see him diagnose and stay with a receiver in such reps. And I think he did a good job on that particular play. On the very next play, he met Owen Wright in the hole for no gain. Owen Wright was the running back that he tackled, air quotes, on both those plays. But he was, Ojabo also had a big physical hit with, I believe, Roquan Smith, on Vokalek. So lots of nice plays there for in a day for Ojabo, and hopefully he can keep that up. And another guy that I'm really looking forward to see play in preseason a fair amount. So we'll see. I think the most interesting thing about Ojabo during the preseason, I'm interested also to see if he can get to the quarterback, if he can make some great moves, if he can show some compound moves that are clearly, something that Chuck Smith has helped him with. I'm looking for all that, but maybe most importantly of all, I want to see how he can cover. I want to see how he can drop back off the line of scrimmage, and if the Ravens can convert him potentially into a Sam linebacker, given that they don't have anyone else right now. So important preseason for him, and he's a guy I'm definitely watching. Kyle Hamilton was in the backfield all day, run and pass. He continues to be one of the really dominant players in camp. There's not a lot more to say about it other than he's also outgrown the need for him to play very much in the preseason. So I kind of hope they don't do that. But anyway, he's got another fine day today. Roquan Smith, I got 5 plays for you from Roquan Smith because he had a very big day. And if anything, he was too physical for this practice. So, you're in pads. You want to hit at some point. Ideally, you do that to an opponent. But in his case, he made 5 plays. I'll go through them here. He forced out Prochet on a jet sweep. So a little pitch play in the backfield or a jet sweep. And he stayed with Prochet and pushed him all the way to the sideline. So I thought that was good. He had a pass defense at 5 yards that he dislodged from Ben Mason. Now, Ben Mason has had absolutely an awful camp of not being able to hold on to the football, but Roquan gave him one more to remember for the road. So that was another good play. He had a downhill play on Vokalek, 5 yards between the numbers and the left hash. Positive play, not his only play on Vokalek, He and Ajabo delivered a big hit to the tight end to dislodge a ball 5 yards, 4 circle. That's I am my shorthand, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and between the right hash and right numbers. And that was in 11 on 11. He also had a pass defense intended for Vokalek that came from Josh Johnson. So really good day of getting his hand on the football, and he looks ready to go. And more than anything, you look at this defense, and they didn't just play more physical because they wouldn't have to. They can play brother. They could presumably turn their level of effort down to brother-in-law play, but they haven't done that. They've been very eager to play football hard in order to try and get better and get ready for that regular season. So Roquan's been one of them to do that. Continuing on, Marcus Williams had a PD in coverage of Charlie Kolar. There wasn't a whole lot to report on that one other than it was about 5 yards between the numbers and left hash. Good play. Patrick Queen had a hard tackle on Keaton Mitchell on one of the most physical plays of the day. I'll just say this. This is not a tackling practice. This is a non-tackling process. It's a do no harm to your running backs and wide receivers practice. So don't let them get hit hard. And he took Keaton down to the ground, and there was no other individual tackle. There were a couple times where there's a little bit of a collision and somebody spun. I don't remember anyone truly being tackled otherwise. So that was frustrating, and it's good to see that they probably had a talk about that, would be my guess at the end of the day. Travis Jones, another real physical play. He knocked down Owen Wright from behind, and Owen Wright got up, and it looked like Travis Jones was still trying to slap at the football to knock it loose. So I don't know what the rules are for that. I don't know if it's part of the Ravens scoring system that, go ahead and dislodge the football whenever you want. And it still is going to count as points for the defense. The defense is saying, oh, we really want to make sure we do this, and et cetera. But anyway, I think that Travis Jones is a little bit over the top in terms of his physicality on that particular play. Go move on to the interviews. I'm just going to take a sip of water here before we go. So Randy Brown was first at the podium. He had a fair number of things to say. The first was about Tyler Ott, the long snapper. He said they had a list of 70 long snappers that they went through to find Ott. Talked about how lucky they were to get him, and that he'd been a Pro Bowler already with Seattle, and he was somebody who they're very happy about being able to get. He talked about Jordan Stout being the best holder in the NFL. I talked about Justin Tucker having the strongest leg in the NFL. And people asked a fair number of questions about, what makes Tucker great or this or that, related questions about what does he still need to work on, that sort of thing. He said the thing he does is he tries to hit every ball in the same sweet spot, an inch below center, right on that football. And that's how he is so successful converting such a high percentage of his kicks. And he does it time after time after time right on that sweet spot. I asked him specifically if he had a limit on how many kicks per day Justin should be taking. So, you hear about Michael Phelps taking a lot of laps, even when he's swimming in the Olympics, and he may have 2 events on the day. He still might do 200 other laps. So it was interesting thing I wanted to ask about was, how many kicks per day is about the right number? He said, well, Justin and I may have different ideas about that. I'm paraphrasing slightly in how that would be. But he said that Justin knows when he's done. And he kicks 3 to 4 days per week and might kick anywhere between 30 and 60 kicks per day. So maybe close to 200 total, maybe a little bit less. Maybe it's more like 160 balls per week that he may kick. And he tries to kick every single one of them the same. And I think we saw last year Jordan Stout take time from him as the kickoff specialist, which is probably indicative of some wear that they would like to remove from Tucker's plate. Of course, during the regular season, Tucker was right back there doing the kickoff, so it's not like that was a permanent solution. But it's maybe something that they'll consider going to again. Tucker was next up at the podium. He charming as always. He said he worries about action and not consequence when he kicks. So just keep doing things the right way. Hopefully things will work out, and you're not getting too concerned about the consequences of your action, but you're just trying to get the action right on a play-by-play basis. That's the way I took it to mean anyway. He is now the longest tenured Raven, and of course he said he still feels like a rookie who can't be caught and makes millions and millions of dollars. But anyway, he's in a good spot, and he was very good at the podium. Tyler Ott was next up at the podium. He's the long snapper. He talked about his path to the NFL from being a toe kicker himself. And I think this might have been in high school, might have even been before then, to a long snapper. He says this is something that he never really had to think about. He was really a tight end for his college career, and it wasn't until later in his college career that he really saw that his path to the NFL was as a long snapper. And I guess they probably, anybody who wanted to talk to him was probably, calling him up with that in mind. And he thought, that'll work. But the plus side of it, he said, is that he didn't ever really have time to think about long snapping and some of the consequences of how important it was. So hopefully that's something he brings to this amazing group of players. Jordan Stout, who Randy Brown, obviously said is the best holder. It's really nice to have a 3-man wolf pack, and Tucker did mention that he's going to try and come up for a different name for that. But he just really wanted to mash footballs, so maybe the Mash Brothers or something would be a good way to do it. But anyway, those 3 players, extremely talented, and it was nice to get them all at the podium in a single day. Jordan Stout was the next. He did a punting camp during the offseason. I always find that good to hear. Whenever players are doing football-related, position-specific coaching during the offseason, I think it's a very good thing. Doesn't even have to be the perfect situation for it, although you can make it perfect by finding your mentor in such an arrangement, or just having other people around the league that you can talk to who play the same position as you. So anyway, glad to hear that Jordan, did that. He said the comment was made to him about Randy Brown calling him the best holder in the NFL, and he said he agrees that he's a very good holder, and he had some faux humility that kind of went up front of that, but very confident guy. Knows he's a good holder, and his teammates certainly back him up on that, and very positive thing. Broderick Washington was the last man of the stand. Now, Broderick Washington, it was just announced early in the day, had signed this contract extension, something we've really been expecting in terms of getting a defensive lineman other than Travis Jones signed for 2024. So this is a big one. One thing you really take away from Broderick's time at the podium is he's an extremely thoughtful respondent. So you're told in a deposition, and I'll let you think about that for a second. I need another drink here. Nice thing about having 2 people on the show is that I can get my drinks in, kind of clear my throat with a mute button and whatnot while the other person is talking, and I don't have to, interrupt myself in the middle of the show. But I thank you for holding on. But anyway, very thoughtful respondent is Broderick Washington, and he sits there and will wait for 5 seconds before he starts to answer the question. You can see him kind of moving his head and thinking about what the question is, kind of making facial expressions that go with that. And then he starts to answer, and it's a considered response he gives you. So you mentioned he was looking forward to sharing the moment with his mom. Said he hadn't had the conversation with her yet. It happened this morning. Obviously, probably they'll talk again before the weekend comes. But he mentioned her as the motivation for his work ethic. He grew up with just his mom, and his mom just was always working hard to keep things going. And they always talk about how Broderick is the hardest working guy in the building, that he's always going at something. He did talk about the other players who were waiting for a deal, and said he thought many of those players were more deserving than he was. That is a very smart and thoughtful comment from Broderick Washington. So obviously, his teammates will be universally happy for him, but they may also be a little bit jealous themselves of the fact that he's able to get a deal prior to year 4, and several of the rest of them are not. I mean, Geno Stone does not have a new deal. Patrick Queen, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards will be a free agent, even though he's not a 4th-year player. There's some others I'm missing. Justin Madubuike. So, there's multiple players on the team who haven't been as fortunate as he does to get the contract, and I think the Ravens have picked Broderick for a right player, right price benefit. Broderick is a guy, because of where he is in the salary scale, that is more likely to look at this as divisible benefit is on the table. He'd like to stay in Baltimore, and they can, he takes a little bit less risk and a little bit less money, and the team benefits from that also, and fulfills a need to get the defensive line addressed prior to 24, and also to have another player under contract who is affordable, with Lamar Jackson making the money he is, with Odell Beckham making the money, with all that dead money that they pushed into 2024. So Washington, a good signing for the Ravens. I'm very happy they have him for the next several years. One of the other interesting things, they announced at the end of practice, and he was congratulated by his teammates. So classy move. Whenever somebody gets a promotion, if you can do that and kind of announce it as a surprise in front of a crowd and get the expected response you want, I think that's always a positive thing when you could do that. Was asked about learning from Chuck Smith. His response was he'd be a fool not to, which I think is a great response. So Broderick had great responses. He will do well if he's ever deposed in the future, and that's something that doesn't come naturally to everybody. A lot of people they get defensive in a deposition, or they're not able to answer questions as they would normally, or they get nervous. But Broderick Washington seemed to be in the moment today and doing a really good job with it, and very nice to hear a mature young man like him at the podium talking about how happy he was about the situation, and thanking the right people, realizing that he's not the only person in this particular contract situation. I think will play well with his teammates. So I thought a good time at the podium as well. Anyway, that does it for the camp notes for August 9th. I will not be back at camp for several days, but we're going to have, of course, the regular film study material coming out from the game. So keep an eye out for that. We'll also have a pre-game discussion of what to look for on Saturday, and I think that'll be a lot of fun too. So we'll have stuff to do, and we hope you'll stay with us and rejoin us for camp notes on 8/15, which is the first of 2 scheduled what should be very physical practices, joint practices with the Commanders. So I'm looking forward to those 2. In particular, they'll split the offense and defense onto 2 fields, and they'll be both going at once. It's really quite a show. It's very much a 3-ring circus. You can't see everything when this is going on, but I'm going to do my best to get in a good position that I can take some good notes and report on this with camp notes on that day as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.